Okay, good evening, everyone. We meet again in JVM Meetup 50 second. Is that my voice is audible? Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So we meet again in JVM Meetup 50 second. So tonight on our JVM, we have our speaker from Microsoft. His name is Rory. But before that, before I introduce, wait. Wait, my connection is not good. Wait, my connection is not. Okay, first I will, as usual, I will introduce the JVM because this is Rory first join on JVM, so I will introduce a little bit maybe, yeah. Wait.
Great.
Okay, wait. I will share my desktop. Sorry. Okay. Can you see my my presentation?
No, I'll stop sharing and then I think you need to share again.
Oh yeah, okay. How about now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so please introduce myself. My name is Hendy Sandika, so you can call me Kang Hendy because yeah, I'm from Indonesia. I'm CEO, but not a CEO. CEO is Chief Everything Officer, Chief Event Organizer for this group. So you can find me on this link, link.ee/Hendy Sandika. I manage JVM user group, JVM Indonesia, Kotlin, and local developer, JVM, Kotlin, and this. So the history is JVM user group at Facebook. It established 2010, but actually from Yahoo Mails since 2005, more or less. So we began on Yahoo Mails, and then we moved to Facebook, and then on 2016 we moved from Facebook and truly into Telegram. So currently we have 2.7.2K Telegram member. So we have Meetup. Actually, ideally we have Meetup once a month, according to our sponsor, according to our speaker and everything. Once a month, and then if you want to go speaker, as usual, you can contact me. So this is our workshop. There's our t-shirt, Kotlin, and then okay, we have social media here, JVM user group on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and this is our YouTube channel. Okay, and if you want to know about what is the fast event, JVM Meetup event is this what discuss about, so you can direct to jvmindonesia.eventbrite.com. Just follow and click follow, and then you'll be notified. Okay, this is the event. Actually, once a month, and then maybe this is the fifth lah. Yeah, on this year. Okay, I think that's it from me. Okay, that's it. So after that, I will handle it to Rory. But before that, I have 2 JetBrains licenses. So as usual on our JVM Meetup, I'll always share. I always share the JetBrains license from JetBrains. So 2 JetBrains license will be given to you, will be brought to you for the best question. Okay, so please prepare your question, your best question. Okay, I will pick one of you, and yeah, two question. the best question
what
from
we
you.
can do is that you don't necessarily have to use English for the questions. So if you can translate those
Yeah,
questions
we can translate it for you maybe ya, okay? Just kalau tidak bisa, maksudnya nggak enak dalam bahasa Inggris, udah bahasa aja nggak apa-apa gitu ya. We will translate it for you. Okay? Okay, Rory, I will give it back to you. I will give 45 minutes for you. Okay, go ahead, Rory.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to start my clock for 45 minutes. And welcome. And this is a privilege and a pleasure for me to be speaking at the JVM user group. I just recently spoke at GovTech Singapore. It was an incredible experience. I've been to Singapore a few times. Indonesia also, incredible hospitable people, beautiful country, a little bit too hot for me, coming from Johannesburg, South Africa. Now, I am a light-skinned male, 42 years old. I have brown hair. I'm wearing a black shirt. And I'm speaking to you from my home office in Johannesburg, South Africa. And I work for Microsoft as a principal cloud advocate for Azure technologies. Now, what does a cloud advocate do? They empower developers wherever they are. And this is why I say I'm privileged to speak to you, because I'm speaking to you in a country so far away, but yet so close. And today I'm going to show you a talk that I did while in the pandemic, and I learned to code in the bath. Rory, what are you talking about? How can you code in the bath? How do you code? Now, in the pandemic, we couldn't really go anywhere. So we had our mobile phones, and a lot of us would take from our mobile phones from our bedroom, we would take our laptops. But it occurred to me that a lot of times I would start my coding experience and my day in getting ready for the day. And how I got ready is that I would go pop into the shower or have a bath, and I'll take my device with me. And I started to also code with Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code, and we're going to go through it today. It's got some incredible Java features there. You can see here, this is a REST service that I'm coding, but I also acknowledged that the world was changing, and I started coding on my mobile device. So that's the exact same project that you see there, except this is on my Samsung A50 device there, and you see there I'm running a Maven install. And this is really the talk I want to show you, that developer tools have changed considerably. And I'm going to show you the new developer tools that Microsoft has recently announced, which is Codespaces, GitHub Copilot, GitHub CodeQL, and also I'm going to show you Azure Container Apps. So let's start with Visual Studio Code. Now, a while back, about nearly 9 years ago, we realized that there needs to be a new class of tools. So you've got your editors, so your text editors, your Notepad, your Notepad++, your Vim, all of those things. Those are keyboard-centric, they're lightweight, they're fast, they understand files and folders, and they can handle many different programming languages and also many different spoken languages. You also have your IDEs. We mentioned earlier today JetBrains IDE, which is one of our partners for Azure. It understands projects rather than file systems. It has integrated build lifecycle. It understands code. If you've used Copilot, which is available now to all developers, you can actually get Copilot to understand your code and suggest to you entire coding solutions to what you're looking for. It also knows how to debug, so it can attach a process there and debug. It has source control integration, templates and wizards and designers. So we realized that there needs to be a fine line between what an editor is and how fast an editor is and an IDE. Now, IDE is still very valuable, especially when it comes to refactoring large projects and team integration, because it's more powerful, it allows you to do more quicker if you're in a team setting. But VS Code is the best of an editor and an IDE. It's lightweight, it's fast, it understands languages, it understands codes, and lets you use debug, and still kind of feels like a file explorer. So then what is Codespaces? We talk about Codespaces. So basically, Codespaces is VS Code. So we took VS Code, we popped it onto the GitHub cloud, and then it allows you to manage your environment from anywhere. So you can kind of replicate your environment. You can feel at home anywhere. So you can synchronize all your settings. As soon as you pop up an instance of Codespace, it feels like VS Code, but you can set it up so every time that you pop it up, it feels the exact same experience. You can develop from anywhere. So you can actually run Codespaces on your device, in the device browser, or locally on your device or your laptop, or anything that understands how to browse HTML. And you can supercharge your collaborative development because it is GitHub. So you can use all of the features that GitHub has to do collaborative development. So I just spoke to one of our customers and they said, listen, we're going to get rid of all of the laptops and we're going to just go Codespaces. I'm not advocating that. Don't go there, because there are some real valuable reasons why you want a laptop, especially in South Africa. We have questionable electricity. So you want to kind of keep your laptop and your desktop still there though. But when you look at what machine types you can get, I can get a 16 core, 32 gigs RAM and 128 gigs of storage for the same amount and cost as I would actually buy a coffee. So I can get, like, for $2 a day, I can run an instance there. And it saves me a lot of money. Also, I don't have to worry about device refresh. Now I can also set the regions that I want to do. And I'm going to show you later today that I'm running in Europe West. So it can be much quicker if I wanted to download files to and from the GitHub Codespaces. So how do you get started? You go onto GitHub, you go onto a repository, and you add a dev container file. That's the first thing that you want to do. You add a dev container file and a Docker file. I'm going to show you an easy way to do this without having to download anything, because you can just go into VS Code remote try Java, and you can just template that project. So you can template that project out, and it comes with everything that you want to get started with Codespaces. You can also go into your existing projects, and you can just go and install the Codespaces Visual Studio Code extension, and you can just go in and add your developer container files. It'll give you a selection of list of what you are available to add, and it'll add your Docker file and your dev container in for you. You can go into the advanced templates. So under the GitHub repo, Microsoft VS Code dev containers, you can see there's a lot of advanced ones for microservices, distributed, Docker Compose, a lot of those really nice templates. Or you can roll your own. You can start from fresh. You can see there, I'm going to take a repo called Octa.org, which is the main GitHub repo. I'm going to take the branch that I want to create my Codespace off, my dev container, which is the dev container is how you set up your Visual Studio instance inside your Codespace. Don't worry, we're going to get to that. The region, and then the machine type, and you can just start your session. So how does it work? So first of all, it's hosted in the GitHub cloud, and it has multiple environments. So each one of these environments really is an instance. It's got a Docker container running, and then you connect your editor of choice, which is any web browser, or actually right now, any Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio IDE into your Codespace environment. And then it uses port relay to kind of like tunnel through your environment to give you access to your underlying ecosystem. And I'll show you when we do the demo how easy it is to get started. So once you have that, this is the compute, which is the Docker container. It's cloud hosted. You've got virtual machine isolated in your Docker container, so no one can really mess with your instance. You can customize your environment, and you can use Docker Compose to actually run a database inside your local environment. And the reason that we really love this is because you can run an inner loop. And I'm going to do a demo with you of how you can run an inner loop, and I'm going to run Docker inside my Codespace, because a lot of times you want to code within your IDE and then only step out of that to go and deploy to your staging or production environment. The network is secure. It's got port relay, so you can get access to a underlying port, but only through a dedicated URL. Storage is encrypted at rest, and you get dedicated storage. And remember, it's GitHub, so a lot of your stuff is stored on your repository. So your config, let's look at devcontainer.json. And devcontainer.json really sets up how you're going to run your IDE. So you've got your Docker instance, which is just your cloud-hosted server. and then you've got your dev container.json that is set up to use your Docker instance. So you've got your image here. Your image really is what Docker file you're going to use. And in this example here, I'm going to use the variant 11 bullseye, which is the open JDK. Yeah, Microsoft has their own open JDK. We're going to have some environment variables. We're going to have some settings. We're going to set up an extension here. Now, these are the extensions that Visual Studio Code is going to install for me when I actually start up my instance. I'm going to port forward to port 8080, and then the user I'm going to run on my Docker instance is going to be called VS Code. Now, when I run Docker and that Docker file, I'm going to say, what are the Docker files there? Now, remember, a lot of these are, you can just go in and use those templates, or it will write it for you. So you don't have to worry too much about understanding Docker. And I know what you're thinking. Can I run this locally on my desktop? Can I run Codespaces on my desktop? Yes, because it's Docker, you can actually run an RDE-based Docker instance on your PC. And I'm going to show you how you can actually run that. So you don't actually need to pay anything really, because you can just run it on your PC and replicate it there. But if you want to move to the cloud, you can. I'm going to install Gradle, Maven, and Node. So this is the port forwarding. You can see there, I can add ports, stop forwarding ports, and open in the browser to go in and test. So how do you test this? So here's the GitHub cloud. You've got the VS Code, your little Docker instance running there, and you connect it with your code editor, which can be a browser, Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio, or a number of other and their upcoming IDEs that we're going to release. And then you've got your browser there that you want to install. Now, when you debug, you're going to port forward there, you can see to your browser, and it's, I'm going to show you a live debugging instance there in the demo that you can actually put a breakpoint while you debugging your app. And if you're going to use a database, it's inside your Codespace environment. So now that we've looked at the basics of Codespaces, and we're going to use a little bit more of it in the demo, I want to introduce you to container apps. So containers are great, and we understand that Kubernetes is great also, but Kubernetes can be a little bit painful. And there's so many memes around there. Yeah, so what I thought Kubernetes is like and what Kubernetes is actually like. And there's so many memes out there about YAML and about really suffering through Kubernetes, but it's still difficult. It's powerful, but it's really, really difficult. So we introduced something called container apps. Container apps is Kubernetes, except what it does, it runs on top of Kubernetes, and it makes the life cycle, you don't have to really manage the life cycle. It allows you to create microservices pretty easily because it has a built-in service registry similar to Spring Cloud called Dapper, and you can connect Dapper to any existing registry. It's a nice little protocol, cross-platform protocol to allow you to do that. You can see there's Microsoft Outlook actually saying to me, I'm now in the middle of a demo going to go in. Let me go close Outlook there. Oh, where are you, Outlook? Okay, no, it didn't do that. You can also go in, let's go back there, and create event-driven processing. So and in the demo I'm going to show you, I've got a Kafka queue that is going to pick up an event and then it's going to process it. You can create public API endpoints. So you can have revision management for blue-green deployment and canary deployment, and then you can have background processing. So if you want to scan an image, you can actually just build up a container, serverless container, scan that image, and then bring that container down. Instead of costing you X for running a VM or Kubernetes, you just delete it. And remember, we cost in the millions and millions of transactions, cents per millions of transactions. So container apps can actually be incredibly more powerful and cheaper than Kubernetes. So how does this work? Let's go through a nice demo, and then we'll do a demo, and then we'll take some nice questions. So here's an inner loop and a feedback loop that we see often in our customers at Microsoft. So on the left, my left, this side, we've got the inner loop. So you've got Codespaces here, or VS Code, or your IDE of choice. And inside you've got code, test, and debug, and you've got your dev cluster. Remember, I can run a database locally there, or I can run a Docker Compose. I can run basically anything on my Codespaces environment, either in the cloud or on my laptop. Now, once I am finished with my inner loop, I'm finished testing, I can actually go in and I can push my changes through to GitHub. Now, using GitHub Actions, it'll be triggered on that GitHub action, and it will go in and run a build for my environment. So the first thing that you're going to do is build your application. And in this example, we're going to build a container. And the container is going to take a Docker file. In our demo, we're going to create a Docker file. And the Docker file is then going to be pushed to a container registry. Now, locally, I don't really want to work with Docker, but I'm going to show you how. I want to work just with Visual Studio Code and just run a Java project. So the code is going to be built in GitHub Actions. Then I'm going to scan, test and scan, and I'm going to use Playwright, which is a new testing framework. I'm going to go through that also in the demo to go in and do integration testing. I'm happy with the integration testing. So then I'll use GitHub Actions to push it to my deployment to my container apps. So then I'm going to deploy to staging, which is my revision management. But when I deploy to staging, I want to run some compliance on that, on my staging environment. Does it comply? Do I adhere to accessibility? Do I adhere to privacy, security, critical vulnerabilities? So I'm going to run code QL and also my policies for compliance and governance. And once production is set up, I'm going to monitor that. And then I'm going to create a feedback loop using Azure Monitor or my monitoring tool to go back in and start that process all over again. Now, in the demo, I've got the Spring Pet Clinic. So you can actually get started here. And we've partnered with Pivotal to create a dev container on Spring Pet Clinic. And if you want to find the completed project, you can go to https:/aka.ms/caps-java for the completed project that I'm going to be demoing today. Now, don't worry, there is also a nice tutorial that I'm going to give you that is going to show you how to do all of this with the entire inner loop and outer loop with Quarkus on container apps. So demo time, let's go into our demo. And I want, I've got 27 minutes to do that. And I want you to notice, I'm never going to leave my browser throughout this entire demo. Now, I could actually run a lot of it locally on my PC, but I want to show you the power that is browser-based development. Okay, so let's go in and I'm going to minimize Microsoft PowerPoint here because else it gets a little bit difficult. So this is my Macintosh. And I know what you're thinking, Rory, you're a Java developer working for Microsoft on a Macintosh. Yeah, because remember, we go where the developers are. Not everyone uses Windows, not everyone uses .NET, and not everyone actually uses, a Lenovo laptop. So let's start with the browser. So I'm going to open up Google Chrome. And now I've got the Spring Pet Clinic application. So the first thing I want to show you is how to get started with Codespace. So I'm not really going to create my project directly off Pet Clinic from start to finish. I'm just going to start up a Codespace here and show you how to get started. So I'm going to click on code here, and then you can go create Codespace on main, and you can drop it down there, and you can go configure and create a Codespace. Now, when it goes in and configures and creates a Codespace, we partnered with Pivotal that in your dev container file here, it goes in and uses those container files. But you don't have to do that if you don't want to, because you can actually go in and create your own dev container. You'll see at the end of my demo, I've actually gone in and created my own dev containers. You can go code, and then you can just go create Codespace on main, and it's going to go in and via the browser, it's going to create your environment for you, and it's going to create a Docker instance with a dev container. So if you look at the logs here, what it's going to do, it's going to go into that dev container, it's going to run the Docker instance, going to install all of the underlying Docker dependencies, and then it's going to go into VS Code and go in and create your extension. So in that example, we helped Pivotal to create the VS Code extension, the Spring extension, and you can add the Azure extension if you wanted also. Then it's going to install Maven, Gradle, and Node. So that's how you get started. But you'll see there at the bottom, there's open this code in VS Code Desktop. I can run this entire process on VS Code desktop with Codespaces with remote containers. You wouldn't even know the difference if I ran it on my desktop or if I ran it in web. If I can just ask everyone to just mute their microphones, please. Danny, I'm going to just mute you there. Thank you so much. So that's finishing up here, and you can see they're done. So a new container there, and this is just running four CPUs and 8 gigs of RAM. So it's pretty small. You can run up to 32 gigs, 32 CPUs and 8 gigs RAM. And you see there's my instance there. And now I can actually start in the Pet Clinic application. But I've taken a little bit step further, and I've got the application already set up, and I've got a little bit more meat that I've set up in my demo. So this is the exact same application, except I've tested it and I've added a little bit more of my workflow. So this is the end result of what we're going to show in the demo. Now, this doesn't have a dev container file. So what this actually uses, it uses the Codespace Linux container. So if I go into here and I show you Codespace Linux here, so this is the basic dev container that every other container uses if you're not going to specify your own container. And you see there's the base.docker file and the dev container.json. So this is what I'm using currently here. And this is the Spring Pet Clinic application. So let's run this. And I want to remind you exactly what the Spring Pet Clinic application actually does. So I've run Maven build already on here. And I'm just going to start my Spring Pet Clinic application here. Now, remember, I'm in the browser right now. So I'm running an IDE in the browser. And now it's going to run my Pet Clinic application. And I've set up already port 8080. So you'll see here under ports here, I've set up the port 8080. And now it will say to you, your application is running in port 8080. Okay, now I can open my browser and it's going to go into the Spring Pet Clinic. So I can go in, and the Pet Clinic is a place you take your pets to vets. So I can go find owners here, and I can find the owner, and it will find the owner. But what's going on here? Can you see when I hit find owners, it's actually not going anywhere, and it's debugging. It's stuck on a debug point. Because what I didn't tell you is I've actually set a debug point on my browser. So it's stuck on a debug point, and now I can actually go in and run my processes that I want to do for debugging. So I can see there that I'm debugged on the owner controller, and I can go in there and I can add watches onto the owners to check what owners are being searched for. So if you remember here on the Pet Clinic application, I'm finding an owner. There isn't any owner to search there. There isn't any name. So I can carry on there, and it should return back all owners there. So that's great. So I've got all my owners there, but I'm still running in debug. So I can actually go in and I can do that again. So I can go find owners, and I can go in and run the debug, or I can remove the debug point if I wanted to there and carry on. And the next time I go find owners, it doesn't actually stop. But what happens if I actually want to run and do some hot code replace? So a new change that we've added recently in Visual Studio Code is on the start of your application. So if you want to add hot code replace in your Pet Clinic application, when you start it up in your Spring controller, just add a little setting there saying Spring DevTools restart enabled equals to false. And what this will allow you to do is hot code replace your code. So let me show you here what I actually mean, hot code replace, if it's going to work. Let's stop that for a second there. And let's go into our Pet Clinic application. And I want to run that with hot code replace locally with a debug. So let's go into there and debug that. So we're running here. We're not going to stop. And for some reason when I'm on, there we go. There's the icon there. It just kind of hides it. So now I'm going to open in the browser. And now when I go into my owner controller, I could debug it there, but I want to make a change to owner.getLastName to actually say, so if I go in here and I go find owners, it's find owners here. It's printing out on my console nothing. So which is not really a great name. So I'm going to go there, name equals to here. And now what I'm going to do here, instead of debugging, I'm going to actually just click on that little icon. It should be there, but it's going to go in and hot code replace it without me changing anything. So hot code replace, and it goes there, one change class is loaded. Now I'm going to go back in the game, and I'm not actually debugging, and I haven't restarted. I'm just going to go back in there, find owners, and now I'm going to go find the owner, and then made my change there. Now it's actually gone name, and I can see there that the name is empty. So you can actually do debugging and also hot code replace with that little change that I showed you in Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio Code Codespaces. So now that I've showed you how to actually start off with your instance, I'm going to now show you how to use the new test framework that we have called Playwright. So in your testing of the repo, the final repo that I sent you, you'll see there that I've got some tests that I run here, and I can run my tests. Let me just stop my application there. I can actually run my tests. This is a new a window that we've created recently. And whereas this used to take about 25 seconds, let's see how long it takes here. So there's 52 seconds, including the Playwright tests. And it takes about 1.8 seconds to run your normal tests. And then the Playwright test actually is an integration test, takes another about 10 seconds to run. Look at that, 1.8 seconds to run most of the tests. And then if we wanted to see the Playwright tests, so even with the Playwright integration test, 5.2 seconds. And this is native integration into our testing framework. So let's go in and look exactly what Playwright does. Now, what you don't see there is actually ran a Spring Pet Clinic application end to end, and also brought up a server and then went and tested though. So let's go into our test, into our Java folder, into there's our standard test, and I've created a Playwright test here. So let me make that a little bit bigger. Remember, I'm still in the browser. So Playwright is a Microsoft tool, and it's open source. So you can go to Playwright here, and let's show you here, playwright.dev. So it is playwright.dev. So you can go in there, you can get started there, and with any browser, any platform, any API. And it's not only Java. You can use Node.js, Python, Java, or .NET, and allows you to run your end-to-end integration tests and your unit tests with one library. So what I've done here is I've got my test create owner. So remember, we had an owner there, and we were trying to find that though. And I've got find owner. So I'm going to go to the find owner, add owner screen. So if you remember here, the add owner screen is you can go in and you can get the add owner screen. And then I'm going to go input name equals to first name, last name, address, city, and telephone. And then finally, with Playwright, it's similar to Selenium. I'm going to go add owner.click. And then I'm going to go find the page locator, which is a little bit of JavaScript, find the owner name, and confirm that it is Rory Preddy. But I'm going to make a little change here. I'm going to say Rory Preddy with an I, which is in my name. So it should actually fail, because I'm going to go in there and I'm going to add the actual data then as Rory. So let's run this and see exactly what it does. So you can actually run it from here. So I'm just going to go in and run that there. Now, what you'll see there when it actually builds it, it's going to build it and it's going to run the tests, except when it runs the test, it should actually come back to me. You can see there, look at that. And that was quick. And what it does in the output of the terminal, expected Rory Preddy, but found Rory and Rory Preddy. It's actually doing integration tests directly with a browser, with a Chromium browser, because I've actually set it up in my Playwright test. You can see there to use playwright.chromium, and you can use Playwright and any browser there to actually launch it. And that was pretty quick, and it's optimized really for Java and .NET. So let's change that and see exactly how we can get our test to pass. There's player expected. Let's run that test again. Now, this is important because when we push this to production and staging, we want the integration test to run to make sure that we are happy that this is running on our staging or dev environment. So that's fine. Now everything's run there. So now I've showed you Playwright. Let's go in and discuss container apps. So I've got my application, and I'm going to show you how I get my application into a Docker file. But before I do that, I'm going to show you the container app that I set up beforehand to make sure that I can actually push it in there. So I've got container apps here, and I'm showing you how easy this is to actually create it. And I've got a few container apps, but I've got a Spring Pet Clinic application here. It's a basic container app there. And in that container apps, it is a Docker instance and it's running Kubernetes underneath there. And you've got an instance, a port forwarding to your container that you can actually access your URL and you can access the Pet Clinic application. So let me make this a little bit smaller. There's the application.url. And if I click through that, that's going to go in and find all of the containers that I've set up with the port forwarding, but it's 0 to 1, meaning that I'm not paying for this until I actually spin up an application. Now I've set it up also to scale that if I go under load, it'll go in and create up to 5 instances. But right now, the reason this is taking so long is it's actually bringing up a Docker instance, my container app. Other than that, I don't pay for it ever. Because it is running on 0 instances. And this is my application that we just ran, but it's pushed to container apps. So let me show you a little bit about the container apps. So first of all, I've got an image, a container image. So I've got my Codespaces image there, but how does it get to container apps? So in my application, I've got the containers here. Let me make that a little bit bigger. And under containers, I'm going to pull that image, that Docker image from a registry, could be a Docker Hub registry, could be an Azure Container Registry, but I've created an Azure Container Registry already. And then I've got the image tag and also the image name. Now, every time I also spin up that image, I can actually set it up to the number of cores, similar to Kubernetes, and the memory size. And in that case, it's two cores and 4 gigs of memory per instances. Now I can also use containers here. I can set up environmental variables and health probes. But what happens if you do blue-green deployment and revision management? So I can click on revision management. Now, under revision management, I can see there that I can actually go in and see that I've got multiple revisions. I can create a new revision. I've also got labels. Now, what the labels allow you to do is that you can actually go in and create V1 or V2. So if I go there, V1, and save that, I can go in and create a label for my revision. So instead of me hitting the Pet Clinic application that was old, I can actually go in and create 2 labels, V1 and V2. Now, every time you do a label there, it will append that label onto your container app and make it easy for you to access that. So if I go back into my URLs here, you'll see there that under my labels, I'm not too sure exactly where you find it though, but under labels, once it's finished provisioning it under revision management, there we go. It'll actually have label V1, and then it will allow you to, you know what, because I've got my revision mode as single, 1 active revision at a time. If I do multiple revisions active simultaneously, then I can actually use labels and I can go in and use that label revision though. But right now, I've got 1 label. There we go. The label URL for V1, and then I've got my revision URL there. So I can click on V1 or I can go into revision URL. But every time I push my repo, it's going to overwrite that. So you can have the multiple revisions, or you can actually have a single revision. Very similar to Kubernetes. If you're familiar with Kubernetes, it works on a very principle, and you can also do traffic shaping. So I can say 50% to version 1 or 50% to version 2, and then I can slowly progress and do swap overs for different versions. And finally, I want to show you scale. So I've set this up. If you remember when I hit it, when I hit that revision, it actually went in and took a few seconds to scale up because I've actually set it up to min-max replicas of 0 to 5. So it will start with 0. When it hits traffic, it's going to bring up 1 instance. But under HTTP scaling, if I wanted to scale it up to a certain instance, then you can see there, I've set up my scaling rule that if I go under a certain amount of traffic, it is going to scale up based on rules. And you can set up these scaling rules on multiple different parameters. And once you have that, then you can set up your replicas there. This feels and it looks exactly like Kubernetes, but it's so much easier to manage than Kubernetes. Let's go back in and now let's look at exactly how you can go in and push your Docker instance here. So I've got this now. Let's go back into our IDE. Now you'll see here under my Codespace instance here, let's just close those. Under Codespace instance, I've created a Docker file. So here's my Docker file. And in my Docker file, I've got, let's make that bigger. I've just got the Microsoft OpenJDK Docker image. You can use that. Those images are available on microsoft.com/OpenJDK. You can go in and look at how we manage our Docker images. I've exposed port 8080 on my Docker instance. So when I push it through to the container apps, I can look at that. I use the jar file that I'm going to build. And then I copy the jar file there and I add a little bit of a setting here to make sure that my application is aware it's running in Docker. So this is very important, my entry point here. So I can push this to container apps, but Rory, how do I test this? I want to test Docker locally on my Codespace instance. Guess what? You can actually test that. So I can go in to my terminal here. I've got it in my history here. And I can build the local file. So I'm going to build the local file pet clinic instance. And it's already kind of built because I've built this before. So it's built the Docker file here. And now I can go in to my Docker extension, which I've loaded. And I can see there's my application there. And I can run that if I wanted to. Or I can actually just go in and go Docker run. And let me make that a little bit bigger. Docker run. And I'm going to bind to port 8080. And I'm going to run the pet clinic instance. So that instance there that I just built there. So that's another instance there that I'm doing. But I'm going to run that. Let's go back there. Now I'm going to run this locally in Codespaces. So I'm running Docker locally in Codespace. You can see there, I haven't left the browser. I want to test my Docker instance before I push it to container instances. So I can right click on my Docker instance. I can go open in browser. Now I'm running and testing my Docker instance in Codespaces that is hosted there. And I can find owners and I'm happy with that. Now I can actually go in and stop my Docker instance there. So I can go stop. Now I can actually push this to GitHub. Now the easiest way to do this is so you can actually run the AZ container apps and you can actually just go GitHub actions and then add. And you can go in and look at that command and it'll go in and create on your GitHub actions a GitHub actions file that I've created. I've pre-created here under GitHub here. And I've created a GitHub actions. Let me just close that there. That when it is, there's a push, it's going to go in, check out the branch on GitHub actions, set up my Microsoft OpenJDK, build my application with Maven, set up the Docker build, log into a container registry that I already showed you that we created, push the image to that container registry with the Docker file, and then the deploy, it's going to go in to deploy to container apps. It's going to use the AZ command, container apps, set the registry that we had created, and update it to go in and use that pet clinic application. So while we're waiting, we'll take some questions. I'm going to trigger this build, and we can actually see how the build is going to be run. So I'm going to go in here, and in my Docker file here to trigger the build, under new change here, I'm just going to take away that space, and I'm going to say this for Indo. For Indo, I'm going to undo that change though for owner controller, and then I'm going to push that always, and I'm going to make sure we push that there, push. Now, once I've done that, it's going to trigger my GitHub Actions build here. So we can go into our build. So let's go into build our instance here. This takes a few minutes, takes about 3 minutes to run. So I can go into my actions here and see if I hit refresh here. It should actually go in and trigger my auto. There we go. For Indo, And now it's going to go in and run the build process. So now we can take some questions, because it's a great time to actually take questions while we're waiting for the build process to run though. So let's take your questions. We've got 5 minutes left and we can watch the build run and then come back to it as we progress. And remember, the good questions, you don't have to do it in English, but we do give you a license with IntelliJ. Abu, Alex, Mattia, Patrick, Abdul, Kafirfi. There's a lot of really interesting names here. Anyone got a great question for me? Or maybe just a simple question. You can unmute yourself also.
Teman-teman, kalau if you have any question to Rory, please raise your hand first, and then I'm gonna unmute you. Or you can chat on the chat room. You can type on the chat room. Okay.
Okay, so while we're waiting for the questions, I want to show you. So it's setting up the Docker build. It's running that with that Docker instance that we had. And then it's going to run all of those processes. And I've previously run this with the build process. So if we go into a previous builds, you see that there's pushing in, the container image to the registry. And once we have that, let's go back for a second there. You're going to do your deployment stage though. So if you want to get started with that, you can actually go in and you can go AZ container apps, create container app, Microsoft Docs, and look at the CLI commands there. And the CLI command I did to create all of that is that it uses, let's go control, there we go, GitHub actions add. You do need to set up a container registry and give it authentication, but it will create your GitHub actions file for you. And then you can just check in that action file and it will go in and build your application to container apps every single time. So here we go. Now it's busy deploying it. So it's setting up the job, deploying to container apps. It's taking the Docker instance that we had and then going in, and it's already built that Docker instance and deploying it to our container instance. We should see the revision management when we go back into our instance on container apps, that it has just been recently updated. And it also should actually tell you with that GitHub Actions commit exactly that this is the revision that we pushed. So let's go in there and let's see what is going on here. And if we go back into our container apps here, let's go back into there, into our container apps. We've got 2 more minutes for your questions. You'll see here under revision management and date created. The time now is, okay, so this was the 16th of the 6th. So if I click on that, and it should actually change it eventually when we do those revisions. Let's go back into our GitHub Actions. So it is finished there, deploy. It's deployed and overwritten the application though. So we can go into our revision management here. It's actually deployed it over. We can hit refresh. Should actually have the update to the status. There we go. And voila, we have just done a live demo all the way. We haven't left the browser. I showed you exactly how to start with that. I showed you playwright tests, the new debugging features that we had, container apps, how to actually use container apps, revision management. We did a live push on air. We showed you also labels, and also I never left the browser for once. I want to thank you. You've been a great audience. You can follow me on Twitter. We do have a question. If I saw from GitHub, the official page, Codespaces only available for organizations only. Is there a way for your personal user to want to try the GitHub Codespaces? Remember, you can actually use Codespaces locally. So you don't have to run it in the cloud. You can actually use it, everything local. Now to do that, if I go into my PeckLink application, so let's go into our PeckLink application. Let me open a new browser and I go spring-PeckLink. And when I went into this, you can go into here. Now you can actually run this instead of, I can go create Codespaces on main. You can actually run this locally with remote containers on Visual Studio Code. So all of this, if I go into my application, check this out. This is the application, the Spring Pecklink application, the entire application here. You can see here, but I can actually go in and I can run that in Codespaces locally. And to do that, I can just go in there and I can go into my Remote Explorer. And then I can run into Codespaces there. You can see the containers. I can go into containers and I can run all of that locally. So you can only use Codespaces if you've got a team or an organization account, but I can also run this locally on my PC if I wanted to. Thank you for your question, Ahmad. Thank you. I appreciate their great question, actually. So you can actually run all of this locally. Remember, it's just Docker. It's just a hypervisor. So whatever I showed you in the browser, you can run locally. You can run in a Docker instance. We're out of time. Thank you so much for hosting me today. Please follow me on Twitter. And you'll see a lot of the sessions that I'll be doing in and around Asia, Pacific, and Indonesia coming up pretty soon. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, maybe is there any other?
So there's one. I've got some homework for you.
I wait.
Actually, I've got a link through that you can actually demo. So if you remember. Let's go play from current slide. Let's go move there. And I want you to give you something. So you can go to Quarkus. You can go aka.ms/Quarkus superheroes. And in that, you can create a Node front end to a Quarkus backend, all on Azure. You can use Codespaces also. And then you can go in and fight your superheroes with Codespaces, with container apps. And it also uses the Kafka underlying for your message queuing.
Okay, please. Okay, if there's another question, please turn on your camera and then we're gonna snapshot. Okay, please turn on your camera on. Everybody, wait, not yet. Okay, wait. I'm gonna. Okay, wait. I'm waiting for the others. Okay, please. Okay, then. Wait, Matthew, Abu Muhammad. Yeah, I'm too shy. Okay, I'm gonna screenshot. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you everyone. So thank you, Rory, for your sharing. We meet again on another session. Okay.
Thank you so much. And also, you can learn about Azure on aka.ms/Java Learn Path. So that's what I do for a living. Actually create material for Microsoft. Thank you, everyone. It's been great being hosted.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, end of screen.